Okay, your screenplay is finished and it is fabulous. Now what? This is Pitching Perfect on Writing Right. Hello everybody and welcome to this edition of Writing Right. I'm your host, Scott Brannon. This is Pitching Perfect. I've written some of the screenplays such as The Czar of Hollywood. It's a musical comedy. Million to One is a romantic comedy. Deep Within is sci-fi. I have a adventure team comedy entitled World Peace, and currently working on a drama entitled Countdown. All right, let's get right to it. So you've got your screenplay and it is finished and it is awesome, but you need to do something with it. I mean, after all, that's the whole purpose of writing, is because you want to get your work out there. Well, in order to do that, you're going to have to pitch it to lots of different people. But it's important to pitch it to the right people, and the pitch itself is what's really going to sell it. All right, so why pitch your screenplay? Well, you might need to be pitching your screenplay and trying to convince other writers to collaborate with you and write with you. And I've done that on a couple of screenplays that I've worked on. The most recent one, I worked with a writer called Cleet Helton, and he's a novelist, but it was kind of fun to have someone who writes novels and someone who writes screenplays to work on the same story at the same time. He wrote the novel while I was writing the screenplay, and it was quite an interesting thing. Then there's investors. Investors, yes. So in order to get the finances to fund your screenplay, you're going to need to pitch your screenplay to potential investors. This is something that I did with the Dave Thomas Foundation and my screenplay Million to One. Since at the end of Million to One there is an adoption that takes place, I decided to go to one of the largest adoption agencies in the area and ask them if they would be interested in funding the screenplay. To my amazement, they actually said that they did fund several screenplays already, including Instant Family as well as others, and that they would consider my screenplay to fund. We're still in that process. They haven't said yes, but they haven't said no, so we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. And there's some other things that need to take place first, but we'll see how that all works out. You would also need to be able to pitch to actors and actresses, or potential actors and actresses. While I was on the set of Don't Say My Name, Cameron Arnett had finished his scene, and I made sure that he was done with his scenes for that day, so I didn't interrupt his thought process. And when he was finished, I went up to him and simply said, hey, my name is Scott, I'm a screenplay writer, and I have a screenplay that I'd really love for you to look at possibly being a part of. He asked me then, a little bit about it. I'll get to that in a little bit. We'll explain that when we do our log lines. But he's shown interest in, and we have since that time scheduled him and contracted with him to star in my screenplay entitled Countdown. Sometimes you will be pitching to a production company. Maybe a large entity that can physically film your film and make it all take place. That's going to be a tough pitch for you to do, but if you do it right, that is really the big foot in the door and can make the difference in your career. Or maybe it's just the actual producer from a production company. The same concept applies. You're going to want to make sure that your pitch is perfect. And last but not least, there's also the ability to pitch to a director. I had the ability a few years ago to be at a film festival and got to speak one-on-one with an up-and-coming director who has done a lot of other things in Hollywood, and was able to pitch with him my screenplay Countdown, as well as another concept for a movie that I have entitled Split Decision. It was a really magical moment. My pitch was perfect enough that he understood the vision for the movie and immediately asked if he could be a part of the project. And let's face it, I'm a nobody and he's a somebody, but he wanted to be part of what I was doing because he saw the value in what I was doing based on my pitch. All right, now we're going to talk about all the different types of pitches, because there are many of them, and it's a good thing because there's many different situations that you're going to be in. All right, types of pitches begin with, and let me start with saying you need to know which one to use at which time. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But there's the friend pitch, and it's exactly as it sounds. It's the pitch that you would use to a friend of yours or an acquaintance, and someone who maybe knows you and knows your background, you can leave out some information because they probably already know that, but it's really not an accurate pitch. That's because friends tend to tell you, oh yeah, that was great, even when it wasn't great. Kind of like the American Idol concept, there were many, many years where kids were in church and they would sing at church and everyone at church told them, oh, that was an awesome, wonderful song, and they get on American Idol and American Idol tells them, you might want to consider a different career. But I've sung so many times in church and everyone says that I'm great in church. They're lying to you because it's church and that's what they have to do. It's important that you get an accurate assessment of your work, and that would happen with someone besides a friend. All right, the elevator pitch actually is kind of one of my favorite ones. If you were getting in an elevator and happen to realize, oh, Steven Spielberg and I are standing in an elevator together, and he looks at you and he goes, hey, what do you do? And you say, I'm a screenwriter. And he says, oh, really? What's the best thing that you've written? That's the elevator pitch. You've got probably 30 seconds, maybe a minute, depending on how many floors your elevator is going up or down, to convince Steven Spielberg to make your next film. It's going to have to be precise. It's going to have to be good, perfect, in order for him to want to be a part of your project. So the elevator pitch is something that I think you're going to probably use the most because it's the first step in the door before you're able to do much longer pitches to more important people. All right, another way to pitch is at film fests and pitch fests. Let's just be honest, it's speed dating for pitching your film. Just as you would sit down in a speed dating situation across from someone and you have maybe 3 or 4 minutes to talk and to develop a relationship with them, the same is true with your screenplay. You've got to sit down and you've got to develop a relationship between them and your screenplay in a very short amount of time. And then ding, time is up and you've got to move on to the next people and do it all again. I've been in those situations before where, quite frankly, I've gotten done and they've looked at me like, huh? Because they didn't get it, and that's okay. It wasn't their genre, it wasn't their thing, or maybe I just didn't pitch it very well. But I moved on to the next one quickly, and the next one was very, very good. Maybe I had a better pitch, or maybe it was someone who was closer to my genre and understood what we were trying to do. I had one instance where I sat down and pitched The Czar of Hollywood, which is a parallel, it's a retelling of The Wizard of Oz. And at the end, the lady who I was pitching to looked at me and she said, so I don't get it. And I'm like, it's a parallel of The Wizard of Oz. And she said, and I quote, what's The Wizard of Oz? And I knew I needed to move on. So I did move on. And then there were several other people in that same pitch fest who really liked the idea and who were really interested in it. So it all just kind of depends on your pitch and your pitchability. It also depends on who you're pitching to. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. All right, there's the one-page pitch. That is literally where you take one page and write everything about your screenplay that you want people to know. It doesn't need to be everything about your screenplay. It's just everything that you want them to know within that one page. Obviously, you want to have a log line, maybe a tagline. You'll want to talk about some of the characters, the basic plot, and a basic overview. That's usually good enough to get you through your one page. After that would be a 3-page pitch, same exact concept, only now you can go into more depth and detail when it comes to your screenplay and your plot. You might want to talk about the individual acts in the 3-page pitch. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, maybe talk about some specific elements of the climax or of the actual conflict itself. And if you want, you could give away the ending. If there's a plot twist, that's up to you. Depends on how you want to do that. All right. There's also the internet pitch, which is something maybe Skype or Zoom or something where you're pitching face-to-face, but not literally face-to-face over the internet. You might have a little bit more time and be able to take time to talk about basically what your 3-page pitch is about. But instead of showing it, you would be talking about it and explaining it hopefully very well. Then you have your one-on-one pitch. That is literally the one-on-one sitting in the same room as someone who has the ability to make your film. You want to look like you're together and know what you're talking about. And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this time here is how to make a good pitch in case you get that one-on-one. Here's some don'ts. Don't send unsolicited material. When you're talking about solicited material, that means that someone has asked you specifically to send them information about your screenplay. If you're just kind of blindly sending out your information to these different production companies or to producers or directors, it's probably unsolicited, and I would recommend not to do it. Partly because of legal reasons. Most companies, when they receive your stuff, they realize what it is, they will immediately send it back to you, or they will put it in the trash because they have legal reasons why they're not able to look at some of the other stuff. Because they might have something in development right now that actually is similar to yours. You didn't know it, they didn't know it, but if you send in your stuff, they read it, and then suddenly the next month comes out with something similar to yours, you're going to think they stole your idea, when in actuality, they really didn't. So don't send unsolicited material. It's also a bad way to get your foot in the door. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, and if your first impression is, hey, I'm going to make you read my stuff even though you told me not to, that's probably not going to help your cause later on. Don't burn bridges. All right, you can also don't send unfinished material. I would never want to call somebody and say, hey, guess what? I have this awesome script idea, and then I tell them about the script, and they go, all right, well, why don't you send it over? We want to see it. It's not written yet. Okay, well, then that's misleading. So make sure that you actually have a completed script before you send your finished material. So don't send unfinished material. This one hopefully is a given, and that is don't assume that you are God's gift to writing. It is known that well over 120,000 screenplays every year are read by producers, or should I say rejected by producers. With that many screenplays out there, your one screenplay is bound to have a lot of competition. And while it could be the greatest screenplay on the planet, unless it's read by the right person at the right time, in the right genre of the right production company, it's not going to probably happen. So you shouldn't assume that just because everyone else has told you it's a great screenplay, that it's going to automatically get made. Don't assume that a small win is the end game. In other words, if someone does call you and say, hey, we would like to see your script, which I've had happen to me from a production company, don't assume that that means it's going to be made into a film, because 2 weeks later they called and said, not what we're looking for, but thanks for sending it. Don't pitch to the wrong people. I often want to kind of give my idea and share my ideas with everybody that I meet. Probably not a good idea. Some people might want to steal your idea, but more importantly, they're not really able to help you with your idea. If they can't really help you further the concept of your film, then quite frankly, what's the point? You're just wasting time. Don't let your story get lost in the pitch. So you want to make sure that you get to the point. What is the one thing that every story on the planet in the history of mankind has always had in it, whether it's a movie or a book or a screenplay? Conflict. If you don't have conflict, you don't have a story. If your story is about how you got up in the morning, you brushed your teeth, you went to work, and you came home and everything was happy-go-lucky, it's not a very good story. If there's a lot of conflict on the way, and then you overcame that conflict through amazing ways, now that's a much better story. So don't let the story get lost while you're pitching. Make sure that you get to the conflict, and make sure you get to how you're overcoming the conflict when pitching your story. Here's some do's. The first do is know your genre. Well, that seems pretty obvious. You would know if you're pitching a sci-fi or a thriller or a romantic comedy or a drama. But also as important is to know their genre, know who you're pitching to. If you pitch to a person and they only do thrillers and you're pitching a romantic comedy, you're wasting your time. You're also wasting their time. And you don't want to make them mad at you because maybe one of these days you're going to write a thriller that you need to take to them. All right, do be patient. It takes a long time to get your material to the right people. So be patient and know that it's a process, and it's okay. Not everything's going to happen overnight, and that's okay. Do know that you are talented, have confidence, but without cockiness. It's important that when they meet you, that they feel comfortable with you as a person. And some of that comes through experience and age. Can't really be taught, but if you're young, especially if you're young, make sure that you show confidence, but not in a cocky way. All right, on your pitches, make sure that you leave time for questions and answers. It's very possible that you pitch something to someone and it's phenomenal and they love it and they want to ask you questions, but you're out of time. It's important that you leave a little bit of time at the end. Plus, you'll also be able to tell from their questions exactly how much they liked it, what they wanted to know more about it, and how interested they are. You can explain why you are uniquely qualified. Do explain why you are uniquely qualified. That really helps them to understand why you wrote what you wrote. For instance, in the screenplay that I wrote entitled World Peace, it's about 12 different teenagers from 12 different countries who all go to a single country to have a youth summit. What I did was I took the experiences from the almost 40 students, from exchange students from 12 different countries that my wife and I have hosted over the past 20 years, and I kind of pulled from this person and that person, and I put these 3 or 4 characteristics together to make one character, and because it's a comedy. And so we're kind of making fun of all of the different countries, including the United States, at the beginning of the screenplay, and then I took those same stereotypes and used them as the means of how they save the world at the end of the screenplay. And I did that because I have a unique thing in which we had hosted so many exchange students. Do know which pitch to use in which situations. I mentioned that earlier, and it's very important. If you get on the elevator with Steven Spielberg, you don't want to dive into a 25-page dissertation of your screenplay. You're not going to have enough time, and you're going to get to, I've seen every movie that you've ever made, and I love your stuff, and I have so many screenplays that I've written about your, ding, and he's gone. Then what? So do know the pitch and know which situation to use it in. And then do remember that rejection isn't personal. We recently did tryouts for my screenplay Countdown that we're going to be filming in 2021. And we had over 100 people that tried out for one particular part. Well, I only need one particular person for that. So that means 99 people are not going to be used. It wasn't because those 99 other people were bad actors or actresses. It's just simply that's not who we were looking for. Maybe this one could act well but also looked more the part. Or this one just had the ability geographically that they were closer and it would cost us less money to use this particular actor than that particular actor, even though these 2 actors were equally good at acting. Well, the same is true in your script writing. If you are rejected from your script, then it doesn't mean that your script was necessarily bad. It just means that it's not maybe what they needed at that time. Okay, I suppose it could mean that your script was really bad and you need to rewrite it several times, but just know that it's probably not personal. All right, let's talk now about pitch setup. When setting up your pitch, know where it takes place. You need to set it up. You need to tell us exactly what we need to know right up front because we don't know anything about your script. You might have been working on it for years, hours and hours and hours and weeks after weeks after weeks, and you know the characters and the plot intimately. We know nothing about that. So make sure that you get right to the point and tell us where it takes place and set it up for us. Like I mentioned earlier, make sure you get to the conflict. We need to know what the conflict is. Let's be honest. There's only so many conflicts in the world. There's man versus man, man versus machine, man versus God, man versus nature, man versus himself. There's all those different types of conflicts. I need to know which one it is immediately. And then, as important as knowing the conflict, I need to know how you are overcoming the conflict or how your character is overcoming the conflict. Because quite frankly, how they overcome a common problem is going to be the difference between your screenplay being a good screenplay and it not being a good screenplay, or just being part of the 120,000 other screenplays that are rejected every year. Okay, what are the heroes' plans to overcome? Let us know exactly what he or she is doing and why it is special and why they are special in that particular situation. How does he overcome? Is it himself? Is it an outside source? Is it a special machine or a cool car with lights or whatever? That's what we need to know as part of it. Remember, an inanimate object can also be a character in your film. The question is, do you share the twist? Do you withhold the ending? It depends on who you're speaking with and at what place in the process you are. If you're talking to a producer, you probably need to reveal that special twist in the end, or maybe even investors, they might need to know that. But there might be some other people that you would withhold that so that it's also a cool ending that they find out in time as well. All right, how will they remember your story over the others? That's really the key that we've been talking about through all of this, is you need to come up with the things that make your specific screenplay specific to you and specific to the greatness that your character has come to know. And then why should they join your project? That's another reason why you would be pitching, is to try to get people to join your project, whether as a crew or cast, or maybe to collaborate as a writer, whatever it is. These are the kind of things that you'll need to pitch for. Okay, here's some other tips. The first tip is, how do you set up pitch meetings? You don't. They set up pitch meetings. You're probably not going to be able to call up someone incredibly famous and say, hey, I'd like to set up a pitch meeting with you. That's probably not going to happen right off the bat. You need to work your way up into that. Like I said before, be prepared to pitch in a second's notice. You never know when you're going to step onto an elevator with someone important. Middle management is still a door in to the people that you're trying to get to. So sometimes you can maybe call up, instead of talking to the owner of a production company, maybe you should just call and talk to the assistant to an assistant who at least has access to people, and maybe get them your stuff, and maybe if they like it, they would take it to the next people and the next people and the next people and so forth and so on. Be realistic with your first script expectation. Chances are, after you write your first screenplay, it's probably not going to be made into a blockbuster film in the next 6 months, and you're going to instantly become a multimillionaire. You need to be realistic. Your first screenplay is only probably going to get you about $5,000 to $10,000, if even that, if it's sold to a major corporation. And it's probably going to take years and years and years of rewriting and development for it to ever come to fruition. Okay, know your characters. This is very important. Not only do you need to know the plot of your screenplay, but you need to know the characters intimately. You need to know everything about them. Write backstories about them and be able to answer those questions if someone asks you. Even if it's not something that's maybe necessarily in your screenplay, it's good to know that kind of thing and that you've thought about that, so that as things develop and change, you're able to know exactly where you need to go or not go. And then the last two things is perfect your logline and know your logline. What's a logline? The logline is very important in pitching. It's the first line of defense when it comes to explaining your screenplay in a fast, quick setting. So what I've done is I've taken some of the log lines from some of my screenplays and used them as examples. Some of these are good examples, some of these are not as good examples, you decide. But this is the concept that you really want to do when you're getting your log lines and your taglines together. So let's start with The Czar of Hollywood. The Czar of Hollywood's tagline is, sometimes there are detours on the road to stardom. A tagline is going to maybe be something that, kind of that secondary thing that they put on the poster. It's going to have the name and then kind of what it's about in just like a few words. The log line is a one sentence or a one long run-on sentence that explains the basic concept of your screenplay. So the log line for The Czar of Hollywood is, on her search for a legendary talent agent, a runaway teenage actress meets a naive politician, a heartless rapper, and a preacher lacking courage. But she soon realizes there is no place like Rome, Georgia. So you take everything about the entire screenplay and you condense it into one sentence. And that's going to be your log line. It also could be the first line of defense for your pitch. The pitch for Elf, the movie, I'm sure you've all seen the movie Elf, they simply sat into a room, got into a room together and said, it's Will Ferrell in tights. And they made the movie. All right. The next one is Million to One. Million to One is a full-length feature romantic comedy. Here's the log line. When Martin puts an anonymous ad in the New York Times asking 1 million people to send $1 so he can become a millionaire, he is amazed his plan actually works, but soon gets him into trouble with his girlfriend, the city, and the IRS. And now he is in a race against the clock to find the ultimate return on investment. That's the log line. The tagline is, the ultimate return on investment. So it's even more condensed. I would say on your log lines and your taglines, you need to constantly, consistently edit. Like every day, look at your log line and your tagline and make it shorter, make it smaller, make it more precise and concise. All right, here's Countdown. Countdown is a short film that we're currently working on. A construction worker begins amazing works at home and abroad after being told he only has a few months to live. However, when it is revealed his chronic diagnosis was a mistake, he is left to choose between living as if living or living as if dying. So that's the log line to Countdown. The tagline is, no one is promised a yesterday. We've used yesterday instead of tomorrow or today because this kind of talks about living your life in such a way yesterday to make a better future for tomorrow. So we're not promised a yesterday because we might not have been living yesterday like we needed to. All right, world peace. World peace's log line is, while on a summit for academically advanced students, teenagers from 12 countries must work together and thwart a sadistic plot threatening to expedite climate change and destroy their native lands forever. The tagline for world peace, my personal favorite of any tagline of any of my things that I've written, is this. They don't have superpowers to save the planet, just stereotypes. It's concise, and it tells you exactly what you need to know. These people aren't superheroes. They don't have anything great and special. All they have is themselves, but that's what they're going to use, and they're going to save the planet doing it. All right, Deep Within is a full-feature sci-fi, and its tagline is, what if, all of a sudden, the whole earth quaked? All right, then its logline is, the oil industry has finally tapped the last drop of oil only to realize its absence is starting to cause the entire planet to quake with Armageddon-like results. But the proof they are about to discover deep within the Earth's crust will be more earth-shattering. All right, Righting a Wrong is a drama, and this is its logline. After researching evidence from a real-life murder mystery, two novelists accidentally discover the killer's identity, which sets them on a dangerous mission that could make them the final chapter. Righting a Wrong's tagline is, escaping death is a novel idea. All right, then Act of God. Act of God is a full-length drama, and its tagline is, when it comes to humanity, what's your policy? Now, it is explained better in the logline of why that makes sense. The logline for Act of God is, after developing a technique that instantly turns water to gas, liquid, or solid, a disgruntled scientist develops an insurance scheme to defraud millions with his man-made superstorm, now poised to destroy the East Coast. So in the film, we're talking about this scientist who is making this crazy storm and is defrauding people through insurance claims. So then we have the tagline, when it comes to humanity, what's your policy? So the word policy makes sense because of the logline. All right, then The Carols at Christmas. That is a Hallmark Channel original that I'm currently working on. It's obviously a romantic comedy because it's on the Hallmark Channel. That's all they do. Its tagline is, one holiday, one man, one too many carols. Its logline, while visiting a rural musical town in Missouri, Carol meets some interesting characters consumed with the annual community Christmas gala, as well as a man she has been looking for her whole life. Too bad he's engaged to one of the other townspeople, another Carol. And then last but not least, this is the logline for Split Decision. After making many important choices, one insignificant decision ends up changing everything forever. Or did it? The tagline for Split Decision is, voices determine choices. Split Decision is a new concept that I'm working on. It's actually a new genre that doesn't exist, and I'm excited about that one, and we're still developing it. Your log lines and your taglines are very important when it comes to pitching your information to the right people. So I want to encourage you. I want to tell you to go out there to write, write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite so that when you get into the correct situation, you will have the tools that you need to pitch perfect. For this edition of Writing Right, I'm Scott Brannon.